The lavender dress hung perfectly on Sarah Whitfield's small frame as she sat in her custom wheelchair, watching the driveway through the bay window. Her 7th birthday cake, a 3-tiered masterpiece decorated with sugar butterflies, stood untouched on the dining room table. 24 empty chairs surrounded it, each one set with fine china and crystal glasses that caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Thomas Whitfield checked his platinum watch for what felt like the 100th time. 3 hours. 3 hours past the party's start time, and not a single child from Sarah's class at Cedarbrook Academy had arrived. The magician he'd hired for $2,000 was packing up his equipment in the corner, trying to look busy while stealing glances at his phone. "Daddy, maybe they got lost." Sarah's voice carried that forced cheerfulness children adopt when they're trying to protect their parents from their own pain. Thomas felt his chest tighten. His daughter, who'd been through more in her 7 years than most adults face in a lifetime, was trying to comfort him. "Maybe, princess," he lied, straightening his Italian silk tie. The truth was brutally simple. Ever since the car accident 2 years ago that took his wife Rebecca and left Sarah paralyzed from the waist down, the families at Cedarbrook Academy had gradually distanced themselves. They were polite in the hallways, cordial at school events, but their children were always mysteriously busy when Sarah needed friends. Thomas Whitfield had built his tech empire from nothing, turning a small software startup into a billion-dollar corporation. He could negotiate with Fortune 500 CEOs, could close deals that made headlines in the Wall Street Journal, but he couldn't buy his daughter a single genuine friend. The irony wasn't lost on him. All his success, all his wealth, and he stood powerless, watching his daughter's hope dim with each passing minute. The doorbell rang. Thomas practically sprinted to the door, his Armani shoes clicking against the marble floor. He paused, composed himself, and opened the heavy oak door with his most welcoming smile. A boy stood on the porch, maybe 9 or 10 years old, wearing a simple button-down shirt that had seen better days and jeans with grass stains on the knees. His worn sneakers had been carefully cleaned, but still showed their age. In his hands, he held a small wrapped present that looked like it had been wrapped by the boy himself, the corners uneven and the tape applied liberally. "Good afternoon, Mr. Whitfield," the boy said, his voice clear and confident despite his modest appearance. "My name is Benjamin Harper. I live about 3 blocks over, near the community church. I saw the balloons from the street and my mum said there was a birthday party here today. Is it okay if I come in?" Thomas stood frozen for a moment. Of all the wealthy families in Cedarbrook who had ignored his daughter's invitation, it was a boy from the modest neighborhood near the old church who had shown up. "You don't have an invitation," Thomas said, not unkindly, just surprised. Benjamin's face remained bright. "No, sir, but my mum always says that nobody should spend their birthday alone, and I brought a present." He held up the small package proudly. "I made it myself at church camp last summer. It's a friendship bracelet. I was saving it for someone special." Before Thomas could respond, Sarah appeared behind him, maneuvering her wheelchair with practiced ease. "Daddy, who is it?" She peered around her father and saw Benjamin. Her face, which had been trying so hard to stay brave, suddenly lit up with genuine surprise. "Hi!" Benjamin said directly to her, not staring at her wheelchair, not looking uncomfortable, just greeting her like he would any other kid. "Happy birthday, I'm Benjamin. That's an awesome dress. Purple is my sister's favorite color too." Sarah giggled, actually giggled for the first time in months. "It's lavender, not purple," she corrected with mock seriousness. "Lavender," Benjamin repeated solemnly. "That's way fancier than purple. Can I come to your party? I promise I know all the words to Happy Birthday, and I can sing really loud if you want." Thomas watched as his daughter's entire demeanor transformed. "Yes, please come in. Daddy, can Benjamin stay, please?" "Of course," Thomas said, stepping aside. As Benjamin walked past him, Thomas noticed something peculiar. The boy moved with a confidence and joy that seemed unusual for someone his age, especially entering a mansion that probably cost more than his family would see in several lifetimes. There was something in his eyes, a kind of peaceful assurance that Thomas had rarely seen in anyone, let alone a child. The afternoon that followed was nothing short of miraculous. Benjamin didn't just attend the party, he transformed it. He played games with Sarah as if her wheelchair was the most natural thing in the world. When she mentioned she couldn't reach something, he didn't make a big deal about helping. He just did it, then continued their conversation about whether chocolate or vanilla cake was better. "You know," Benjamin said as they ate cake, chocolate for him, vanilla for Sarah, "my dad says that God makes everyone different for a reason. Like my friend Matthew at church, he can't see colors right, but he's amazing at music. He says the colors being weird helps him hear notes better." Sarah tilted her head. "What about me? What's my reason?" Benjamin thought seriously for a moment. "I don't know yet, but I bet it's something really cool. God doesn't make mistakes, my mom says. He just makes mysteries we get to figure out." Thomas, listening from across the room, felt an uncomfortable stirring in his chest. He'd abandoned any notion of God after Rebecca's death. What kind of God would take a mother from her child and leave that child paralyzed? But watching Benjamin interact with Sarah, seeing the simple, unquestioning faith the boy carried, Thomas felt something he hadn't experienced in 2 years, a tiny crack in the wall of bitterness he'd built around his heart. "Benjamin," Sarah said, chocolate frosting on her nose, "do you want to see my room? I have the coolest telescope. Daddy got it for me so I can see the stars." "Stars are awesome," Benjamin exclaimed. "My youth pastor says there are more stars in the universe than grains of sand on all the beaches in the world. That's like infinity sand." As the children headed upstairs, Benjamin naturally moving to push Sarah's wheelchair, when they reached the small step that led to the hallway, Thomas's phone rang. "Thomas, this is Victoria Sterling." The voice was ice-cold, aristocratic. Victoria was on the board at Cedarbrook Academy and the unofficial queen of the Cedarbrook social scene. "I understand you have an unexpected guest at Sarah's party." Thomas's jaw tightened. "How would you know that, Victoria?" "The Hendersons live across from you. They mentioned seeing a certain type of child entering your home. Thomas, you need to understand our community has standards." "Standards?" Thomas kept his voice level, but his hand gripped the phone tighter. "That boy is from the church district. His mother works at a grocery store. His father is a carpenter. These aren't the type of people we associate with in Cedarbrook proper. Think about Sarah's future social standing." "Sarah's future social standing?" Thomas repeated slowly. "Victoria, no one from your proper community bothered to show up for her birthday." "Well, Thomas, that's a different matter. Parents are concerned about liability issues with Sarah's condition, but bringing in undesirable elements won't help matters." Thomas heard laughter from upstairs, real, genuine laughter from his daughter. "Victoria, that undesirable element is the only child in this entire town who treated my daughter like a human being today. I'm trying to help you, Thomas. The board is watching. Your company's local contracts, your membership at the country club, Sarah's continued enrollment at the academy. Everything is interconnected in a community like ours." The threat was subtle but clear. Thomas felt rage building in his chest, but also something else, a sudden clarity about the world he'd worked so hard to be part of. "I'll keep that in mind, Victoria. I hope you do. Good afternoon, Thomas." After hanging up, Thomas stood in his pristine living room, surrounded by all the trappings of success, and felt emptier than he had since Rebecca's funeral. Through the ceiling, he could hear Benjamin and Sarah playing some sort of game that involved a lot of giggling, and what sounded like Benjamin doing different voices for Sarah's stuffed animals. Around 6 o'clock, Benjamin announced he had to go home. "My family has dinner together every night," he explained. "Mom says it's important. But can I come back tomorrow, Sarah? If your dad says it's okay?" Sarah looked at her father with pleading eyes. "Can he, Daddy, please?" "Of course," Thomas said. "Benjamin, you're welcome here any time." Benjamin smiled broadly, then did something unexpected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the friendship bracelet he'd brought as a gift. It was simple, made of colorful threads woven together, but clearly crafted with care. "Sarah, this is for you. I made it at church camp. See how all the different colors are woven together? Pastor James says that's like people. We're all different colors and types, but when God weaves us together, we make something beautiful." Sarah held the bracelet like it was made of gold. "It's perfect. Will you help me put it on?" As Benjamin carefully tied the bracelet around Sarah's wrist, Thomas noticed his daughter's eyes were wet with tears, but she was smiling wider than she had in 2 years. "Benjamin," Thomas said as the boy prepared to leave, "how did you really know about the party?" Benjamin looked up at him with those strangely peaceful eyes. "I didn't, Mr. Whitfield. I was walking home from church and I saw the balloons. I almost walked past, but then I felt like God was telling me to knock on your door. My mom says when you feel God pushing you toward something good, you should listen." And after Benjamin left, Sarah wheeled herself to her father and wrapped her arms around his waist. "Daddy, Benjamin is different from the other kids." "How so, princess?" "He sees me, not just my chair. And he talks about God like he's a friend. Not like the scary judge the people at Mum's funeral talked about." Thomas felt that crack in his wall widen a little more. That night, after Sarah was asleep, Thomas sat in his home office, staring at his computer screen. He'd pulled up everything he could find about the Harper family. Benjamin's father, Daniel Harper, was indeed a carpenter, specializing in restoration work. His mother, Grace, worked part-time at a grocery store and volunteered at the Cedarbrook Community Church food pantry. They had 3 children, Benjamin being the middle child, and lived in a modest 2-story house in the older part of town. What struck Thomas wasn't what he found, but what he didn't find. No debt beyond a reasonable mortgage, no criminal records, no scandals, just a working-class family living quietly, raising their children, serving their community. The contrast with the families in his social circle, with their affairs, their hidden addictions, their children in therapy or rehab, was stark. The next morning, Saturday, Benjamin showed up at 9 o'clock sharp, wearing different but equally worn clothes and carrying a backpack. "Hi, Mr. Whitfield. I brought some games Sarah and I can play, and my mom sent cookies." He pulled out a tin. "She says it's not polite to visit without bringing something to share." Thomas accepted the tin, noting the homemade cookies inside, each one carefully decorated. "Thank your mother for me, Benjamin. Sarah's in the sunroom." As Benjamin headed off to find Sarah, Thomas's phone buzzed. It was a text from Charles Davenport, president of the country club. "Heard about your new association. Let's discuss at the club. Your membership review is coming up." Thomas deleted the text without responding. Over the next week, Benjamin became a regular fixture at the Whitfield house. Every day after school, he would show up, homework in his backpack, ready to study with Sarah, and then play. Thomas watched, amazed, as his daughter transformed. She was laughing again, engaged, excited about each new day, but the pressure from Cedarbrook's elite was mounting. 3 clients unexpectedly decided not to renew their contracts with Thomas's company. His invitation to the annual Sterling Foundation Gala was mysteriously lost in the mail. Parents at Cedarbrook Academy stopped making eye contact at pickup time. On Thursday evening, Thomas was working in his office when he heard Benjamin and Sarah talking in the next room. "Why don't the kids at school like me?" Sarah was asking. Benjamin was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something my dad told me?" "Yes." "He said that sometimes people are afraid of things they don't understand. And when people are afraid, they can be mean. But that's their problem, not yours. You're perfect the way God made you." "But I can't walk, Benjamin. How is that perfect?" "My Sunday school teacher, Miss Martha, she can't walk either. She says God gave her wheels instead of working legs, so she could roll right up to people who needed help. She visits sick people in the hospital, and because she's in a wheelchair too, they listen to her different than they would someone walking. She says God doesn't make mistakes, he makes ministers." Thomas found himself pausing his work, listening intently. Ministers? Sarah asked. Yeah, like people who help other people see God's love. Maybe your wheels are part of how you're supposed to help people. I never thought of it that way. Plus, Benjamin added with a grin Thomas could hear in his voice, you're way faster than me going down hills. That's just cool. Sarah laughed. Want to race to the kitchen? Whoever loses has to eat the burnt cookie. You're on. Thomas heard them racing off, Benjamin's feet pounding against the floor as he tried to keep up with Sarah's wheelchair. His daughter was happy. Truly, genuinely happy. And it was because of a boy whose family probably made in a year what Thomas spent on a single business dinner. That evening, after Benjamin left, Thomas made a decision. He called his lawyer, James Morrison. James, I need you to look into something for me, quietly. I want to know everything about Victoria Sterling's real estate holdings, specifically anything involving the church district. Thomas, what's this about? Let's just say I'm tired of being pushed around by people who think money makes them moral. James paused. This wouldn't have anything to do with the Harper boy visiting Sarah, would it? How did you... Thomas, everyone knows. Victoria's made sure of it. You're the talk of the country club. The tech billionaire who's lost his mind and is letting his daughter associate with the working class. And what do you think, James? I think I haven't seen Sarah smile in photos for 2 years until this week. I saw the picture your housekeeper posted on Instagram. Sarah looked alive again. Then help me, James. There's something going on here, something bigger than just social snobbery. Victoria's reaction is too strong for this to just be about Benjamin. I'll look into it. Give me a few days. That Sunday morning, Thomas was awakened by Sarah rolling into his room. Daddy, can we go to church? Thomas sat up, rubbing his eyes. Church? Princess, we don't go to church. Benjamin invited us. He says his church is different. They have a special class for kids like me, and the teacher is in a wheelchair too. Please, Daddy. Thomas wanted to say no. Church was where they'd held Rebecca's funeral, where well-meaning people had told him God had a plan while his wife lay in a coffin and his daughter faced a lifetime in a wheelchair. But looking at Sarah's hopeful face, he couldn't refuse her. All right, but just this once to see. Cedarbrook Community Church was nothing like the grand cathedral where Rebecca's funeral had been held. It was a simple building, well-maintained but clearly old, with a wheelchair ramp that looked recently built. The parking lot was full of regular cars, not the luxury vehicles Thomas was used to seeing at Cedarbrook Academy. Benjamin met them at the door, beaming. You came? Come on, I'll show you where the class is. Miss Martha is so cool, Sarah. She does wheelies. As Benjamin led Sarah away, a man approached Thomas. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands and kind eyes. You must be Mr. Whitfield. I'm Daniel Harper, Benjamin's father. Mr. Harper, Thomas shook his hand, noting the firm grip. Please call me Dan. We're glad you came. Benjamin hasn't stopped talking about Sarah all week. He's been very kind to her. Dan smiled. Benjamin has a gift for seeing people the way God does, past all the outer stuff to the heart, gets it from his mother. He paused. I know this might not be your thing coming to church, but you're welcome here. No judgment, no pressure, just community. Thomas found himself unexpectedly moved by the simple welcome. No mention of his wealth, no calculation about what his presence might mean for the church's finances, just a genuine invitation. The service was unlike anything Thomas had experienced. The music was joyful, not somber. The pastor, James Wilson, spoke about grace and forgiveness in practical terms, not abstract theology. And when he mentioned that everyone was broken in some way and needed God's healing, Thomas felt like he was speaking directly to him. But what struck Thomas most was the diversity. Rich and poor, black and white, young and old, able-bodied and disabled, all worshipping together. He saw a CEO he recognized from the business community, sitting next to a mechanic, both singing the same hymn. He saw teenagers helping elderly members to their seats. He saw what community actually looked like. Not the artificial construct of the country club, but real, genuine human connection. After the service, Sarah rolled up to him, her face glowing. "Daddy, Miss Martha is amazing. She taught us about how God uses everyone, no matter what. And she did do a wheelie. She said she'll teach me if I come back next week. Can we come back?" "We'll see, Princess." As they were leaving, Pastor James approached them. He was younger than Thomas expected, maybe 40, with an easy smile and intelligent eyes. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm James Wilson. Welcome to Cedarbrook Community." "Thank you for having us, Pastor." "I wanted to thank you, actually, for letting Benjamin spend time with Sarah. That boy has been praying for a friend who would understand him for months." "Understand him?" Thomas was confused. "Benjamin seems like the most well-adjusted kid I've ever met." Pastor James smiled sadly. "Benjamin is adopted. Dan and Grace took him in 4 years ago. His birth parents were killed by a drunk driver when he was 5. He spent a year in foster care before the Harpers adopted him. He knows what it's like to lose everything, to feel different, to be the kid others don't quite know how to talk to." Thomas felt his chest tighten. "I had no idea. He doesn't talk about it much. But when he heard about Sarah, about what she'd been through, he told his mother that God was calling him to be her friend. He said he knew what it felt like to have your world turned upside down and to have people look at you different because of it." As Thomas drove home, Sarah chattering happily about Miss Martha and the other kids she'd met, he found himself thinking about Benjamin's story. The boy who seemed to have nothing had lost everything and found faith. Thomas, who had everything except what mattered most, his wife and his daughter's health, had lost faith entirely. That evening, his phone rang. It was James Morrison, his lawyer. "Thomas, you were right to be suspicious. I found something significant." "What kind of something?" "Victoria Sterling and a group of investors have been quietly buying up properties in the church district for the past year. They're planning to request rezoning for commercial development. If they succeed, they'll make tens of millions." "What about the families living there? They'll be forced out, eminent domain if necessary, the church too." Thomas felt anger building in his chest. "The Harpers. Their house is right in the middle of the proposed development. How long before this goes public?" "They're planning to present to the city council next month. Once it's public, property values will skyrocket and families like the Harpers won't be able to fight it." "James, I want you to start buying properties in that district, quietly, through shell companies." "Thomas, that's going to cost millions." "I don't care. Buy everything you can before Victoria realizes what's happening." After hanging up, Thomas sat in his office planning. Victoria Sterling thought she could threaten him, could use his daughter's friendship with Benjamin as leverage, while secretly planning to destroy Benjamin's community. She was about to learn what happened when someone threatened the only people who had shown his daughter genuine kindness. Monday morning brought the first real confrontation. Thomas was dropping Sarah off at Cedarbrook Academy when Principal Harrison approached his car. "Mr. Whitfield, could we speak privately?" Thomas glanced at Sarah, who was already wheeling toward the entrance. "Benjamin!" she called out happily, spotting her friend near the doors. "What is it, Principal Harrison?" "There have been concerns raised about Sarah's associations outside of school affecting her integration here." "Concerns from whom?" "Several board members. They feel that Sarah's friendship with the Harper boy might be limiting her opportunities to connect with her peers here." Thomas stepped out of his car, using his full height advantage. "Principal Harrison, are you telling me that my daughter's friendship with a kind, intelligent, well-mannered boy is somehow a problem for this school? I'm simply conveying concerns." "No, you're conveying threats. Let me be clear. My daughter will be friends with whomever she chooses. And if this school has a problem with that, perhaps it's the school that needs to reconsider its values, not my daughter." Principal Harrison stepped back. "There's no need for hostility, Mr. Whitfield." "Isn't there? My daughter sat alone at lunch for 6 months after her accident. None of these concerned parents encourage their children to include her. Now that she has a real friend, suddenly everyone's concerned. I think we both know what this is really about. That afternoon, when Benjamin came over, Thomas made a point of being home early from work. "Benjamin, can I ask you something?" "Yes, Mr. Whitfield?" "Has anyone at school given you trouble about being friends with Sarah?" Benjamin's usually bright expression dimmed slightly. "Some kids say things, but my dad says that when people show you who they really are, you should believe them. The kids being mean are showing me they're not worth worrying about." "That's very mature of you." "My mom says God doesn't want us to hate people who are mean to us. He wants us to pray for them because they must be really sad inside to act that way." "And do you pray for them?" "Every night. I pray for the kids at school, and I pray for you and Sarah too." Thomas felt that now familiar stirring in his chest. "You pray for me?" "Yes, sir. I pray that God helps you see that he still loves you, even though you're mad at him about Miss Rebecca and Sarah's legs." Thomas was speechless. How did this 10-year-old boy understand him better than his therapist? Benjamin continued, "My first mom and dad are in heaven with Miss Rebecca. Sometimes I get mad at God about it too, but Pastor James says it's okay to be mad at God. He's big enough to handle it. And when we're ready, he helps us not be mad anymore." "Are you still mad?" Benjamin thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but then I remember that if my first parents hadn't died, I wouldn't have met my new family, and if I hadn't been adopted, I wouldn't have met Sarah. God doesn't cause bad things, but he can use them for good things if we let him." That evening, after Benjamin left, Sarah wheeled into Thomas's office. "Daddy, are we in trouble because Benjamin is my friend?" Thomas pulled her onto his lap, wheelchair and all. "Why would you think that?" "I heard some moms talking at pickup. They said you were ruining your reputation by letting me play with that boy." "And what do you think?" Sarah fingered the friendship bracelet on her wrist. "I think they're jealous, because their kids don't have a friend as good as Benjamin." "You know what? I think you're absolutely right." Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. Grace Harper arrived at the door just after Benjamin, carrying a casserole dish. "Mr. Whitfield, I hope you don't mind. Benjamin mentioned you work late most nights, so I thought you might appreciate a home-cooked meal." Thomas accepted the dish, inhaling the aroma of what smelled like pot roast. "Miss Harper, this is incredibly kind, but unnecessary. Please call me Grace, and kindness is never unnecessary. You've opened your home to our son. The least we can do is make sure you're eating properly." As Grace was leaving, she paused. "Mr. Whitfield, Benjamin told us about some of the resistance you're facing because of his friendship with Sarah. We want you to know that if it becomes too much, we understand. We don't want to cause problems for your family. Grace, your son has given my daughter something I couldn't buy with all the money in the world: real friendship. The people causing problems aren't worth keeping in our lives if they can't see that." Grace smiled, and Thomas saw where Benjamin got his warmth. "You're a good father, Mr. Whitfield. Sarah is blessed to have you. Please, call me Thomas." "Thomas, then. And you're always welcome at our table if you'd like to join us for dinner sometime. Nothing fancy, but there's always room for friends." That evening, Thomas's phone rang. It was Victoria Sterling. "Thomas, you've been buying property in the church district." So she'd found out. "It's a free market, Victoria. Don't play games with me. You know about the development project. I know you're trying to force out working families to line your pockets. Yes. It's urban renewal, Thomas. Progress. It's greed, Victoria. Pure and simple. You're making a mistake. The council votes next month. You can't stop this. Watch me." Thursday afternoon, Benjamin didn't show up at his usual time. Sarah waited by the window, growing increasingly anxious. "Where is he, Daddy? He always comes." Thomas called the Harper house. Dan answered, his voice tense. "Thomas, Benjamin was in an incident at school. He's okay, but shaken up." "What happened?" "Some older boys cornered him. Said things about him not belonging at the school. About Sarah. One of them pushed him. Benjamin didn't fight back, just kept walking, but they followed him home, throwing things." Thomas felt rage building. "Who were these boys?" One was Victoria Sterling's son, Nathan. I'll be right over. Thomas, that's not necessary. Dan, your son has been nothing but kind to my daughter. I'm coming over. The Harper house was small but warm, filled with the sounds of family life. Benjamin was on the couch, a bruise forming on his cheek. Sarah gasped when she saw him. Benjamin, your face! It's okay, Sarah. It doesn't hurt much. Sarah wheeled over and took his hand. Why didn't you fight back? Because my dad taught me that violence doesn't solve anything. And besides, they were just scared. Scared of what? Of different. My dad says when people are scared of different, they do mean things. But if we're mean back, it just makes more scared and more mean. Thomas knelt down to Benjamin's level. Benjamin, what exactly did Nathan say? Benjamin looked at his parents, then back at Thomas. He said his mom told him that people like me were ruining Cedarbrook, that we were trying to steal money from good families by pretending to be nice. He said I was using Sarah to get to your money. Dan Harper stood up, anger flashing in his usually calm eyes. That woman has poisoned her own son with her hatred. Dan, Grace said softly, anger won't help. Maybe not, Thomas said, standing. But justice might. Dan, Grace, I need to tell you something. Victoria and her group are planning to take your homes, all of them, the whole district. He explained the development plan, watching as understanding dawned on their faces. But we can't fight people like that, Grace said quietly. We don't have those kinds of resources. No, but I do. And I've been buying every property I can in the district. By the time the council meets, I'll own enough to block any development. But I need your help. Our help? Dan asked. I need the community to stand together, to show up at that council meeting, to make it clear that this isn't just about property, it's about people, families, faith, community. Pastor James, who had arrived after hearing about Benjamin's injury, spoke up. The church will stand with you, Thomas. This is our home. Sarah, who had been quietly holding Benjamin's hand, suddenly spoke up. Daddy, can I say something at the meeting? Princess, I don't know if... Please, Daddy, I want to tell them about Benjamin, about real friendship. Thomas looked at his daughter, saw the determination in her eyes that reminded him so much of Rebecca, and nodded. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Thomas worked with James Morrison to secure more properties while simultaneously documenting every instance of harassment and discrimination. The Harpers, despite the increasing pressure, continued to welcome Sarah into their home. Benjamin and Sarah's friendship only grew stronger in the face of adversity. The night before the council meeting, Thomas found himself unable to sleep. He walked into Sarah's room, where she was reading with a flashlight under her covers. Can't sleep either, Princess? I'm nervous about tomorrow, Daddy. Me too. Daddy, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you believe in God now? Because of Benjamin and his family? Thomas was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, sweetheart, but I believe in something I didn't before. What? That there's good in the world worth fighting for. And that sometimes it comes from places we don't expect. Sarah smiled. Benjamin says that's how God works, through people. The council chamber was packed. On one side sat Victoria Sterling and her allies, all in designer clothes and disapproving expressions. On the other, the families from the church district, Benjamin's community, in their best clothes, worn but dignified. Mayor Anderson called the meeting to order. We're here to discuss the proposed Cedarbrook renewal project. Mrs. Sterling, you have the floor. Victoria stood, her presentation polished and cold. She talked about property values, tax revenue, and urban improvement. She showed artists' renderings of gleaming condominiums and upscale shops. She never once mentioned the families who would be displaced. When she finished, Mayor Anderson asked if there were any objections. Thomas stood. I object. Victoria smirked. Mr. Whitfield, with all due respect, you don't own property in the affected area. James Morrison stood up. Actually, Mr. Whitfield's holdings company now owns 43% of the properties in question. Gasps rippled through Victoria's side of the room. Thomas continued. But more importantly, I object on behalf of the families who live there, the community that exists there. Mayor Anderson, may my daughter address the council? The mayor looked surprised but nodded. Sarah wheeled herself to the front of the room. She looked small but determined. My name is Sarah Whitfield. 2 years ago, I lost my mom and my legs in a car accident. After that, everybody looked at me different. The kids at my school stopped inviting me to parties. Their parents whispered about liability and complications. She paused, looking directly at Victoria Sterling. For my 7th birthday, nobody came to my party. Nobody except Benjamin Harper. He didn't care that I was in a wheelchair. He didn't care that his clothes weren't as nice as the other kids. He just cared that I was alone on my birthday. Sarah held up her wrist, showing the friendship bracelet. Benjamin made this for me. He said the different colored threads are like people, all different, but woven together to make something beautiful. That's what the church district is. All different people woven together into a community. A real community, not like the fake one, where people only care about money and status. She turned to the council. You want to destroy Benjamin's home because some people think poor families don't belong near rich families. But Benjamin's family has more love and kindness than all the rich families who wouldn't come to my party. If you destroy their community, you're not improving Cedarbrook. You're destroying the only real part of it. Sarah wheeled back to Thomas, who pulled her into a hug, not caring that tears were streaming down his face. Benjamin's mother, Grace, stood next. My family has lived in that district for 15 years. We've raised our children there, built friendships there, worshipped there. It's not just property to us, it's home. It's where my son learned to ride a bike, where my daughter took her first steps, where we've shared meals with neighbors and supported each other through good times and bad. One by one, residents stood and spoke. Not about property values, but about lives lived, communities built, faith sustained. Finally, Pastor James stood. Council members, I've served Cedarbrook Community Church for 8 years. In that time, I've performed weddings, baptisms, funerals. I've counseled families through crisis, celebrated with them in joy. The church isn't just a building, it's the heart of our community, and that community includes everyone, rich and poor, able-bodied and disabled, long-time residents and new arrivals. That's what makes it strong. He looked at Victoria. Mrs. Sterling speaks of improvement, but what she's proposing isn't improvement. It's erasure. Erasing the poor to make room for the rich. Erasing diversity to create uniformity. Erasing community to build profit. Victoria stood up, her face red with anger. This is emotional manipulation. The facts are clear. The development would bring millions in revenue to the city. Thomas stood again. May I present some additional facts? He nodded to James Morrison, who distributed folders to each council member. These documents detail a pattern of harassment, discrimination, and potentially illegal activity by Mrs. Sterling and her associates, attempting to force families from their homes through intimidation, orchestrating social and economic pressure against anyone who opposed them, even encouraging physical violence against a 10-year-old boy. He pointed to Benjamin's still visible bruise. Is this the kind of development Cedarbrook wants, built on cruelty and greed? Mayor Anderson reviewed the documents, his face growing increasingly grave. These are serious allegations, Mr. Whitfield. They're not allegations, Your Honor. They're documented facts, and I'm prepared to pursue federal civil rights charges if necessary. The vote was called. One by one, the council members voted. When it was over, the development was rejected 7-2. Victoria Sterling stormed out, but not before turning to Thomas. You've made a powerful enemy today, Whitfield. No, Victoria. I've stood up to a bully. There's a difference. Outside the chamber, the church district families were celebrating. Benjamin ran to Sarah, his face bright with joy. We did it! We saved our homes! Sarah hugged him tightly. We did it together. Dan Harper approached Thomas, his hand extended. Thomas, what you did in there, we can never repay you. Thomas shook his hand. You already have, Dan. You gave my daughter her childhood back. You showed us what real community looks like. Grace hugged Thomas, tears in her eyes. You're a good man, Thomas Whitfield. Pastor James approached last. Thomas, I know you're still wrestling with faith, but what you did today, standing up for those who couldn't stand for themselves, that's exactly what Jesus called us to do. Thomas nodded, feeling something shift inside him. Pastor, would it be okay if Sarah and I kept coming to church? I'm not sure what I believe yet, but I want to figure it out. You're always welcome, Thomas. Journey at your own pace. God's patient. 6 months later, the church district had been transformed, but not in the way Victoria Sterling had envisioned. Thomas had established a community development fund, providing low-interest loans for home improvements and small business development. The area maintained its character, but with renewed vitality. Benjamin and Sarah were inseparable, their friendship having survived and strengthened through adversity. Sarah had started a wheelchair basketball team at school, with Benjamin as her biggest cheerleader. The team included kids from both wealthy and modest families, breaking down barriers that had existed for generations. Thomas had sold his mansion and bought a smaller house in a neighborhood between the church district and the wealthy area, literally and symbolically positioning himself between both worlds. His company had shifted focus, developing affordable technology solutions for disabled individuals, with Sarah and Miss Martha as his primary consultants. Victoria Sterling's empire had crumbled. The federal investigation Thomas had triggered revealed years of discriminatory housing practices and financial fraud. She was facing multiple lawsuits and criminal charges. Her son Nathan, removed from his mother's toxic influence, had actually apologized to Benjamin and was slowly building a genuine friendship with him. On a Sunday morning exactly 1 year after Benjamin first knocked on their door, Thomas stood in the waters of baptism at Cedar Brook Community Church. Sarah watched from her wheelchair in the front row, Benjamin beside her, both beaming. Thomas, Pastor James said, you've shared with us your journey from anger to forgiveness, from isolation to community, from emptiness to faith. Do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? I do, Thomas said, his voice strong and clear. I spent years angry at God for what I lost, but he sent a 10-year-old boy to show me what I could find. Faith, community, purpose. I'm not perfect. I still struggle with doubt sometimes, with anger. But I know now that God doesn't require perfection. He just requires an open heart. As Pastor James lowered him into the water and raised him back up, the congregation erupted in celebration. Sarah was crying happy tears. Benjamin was cheering. The Harpers were applauding. And Thomas felt for the first time since Rebecca's death truly whole. After the service, there was a celebration lunch in the church hall. Tables were set up, families mingling, children playing. Thomas watched Sarah race Benjamin across the hall, her wheelchair skills now expert level, both children laughing with pure joy. Dan Harper approached carrying 2 cups of coffee. Quite a journey this year, eh? Thomas accepted the coffee gratefully. I used to think I had it all figured out, success, wealth, status, but I was empty inside. And now I understand what Jesus meant when he said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Not because wealth is evil, but because it can make us think we don't need anyone else, not even God. Benjamin talks about you all the time, you know, says you're the smartest man he knows because you were brave enough to change. Thomas laughed. That boy, he's wise beyond his years. He's had to be. Loss does that sometimes, forces us to grow up fast, but it can also open our hearts if we let it, like it did for him, like it did for you. Grace joined them, carrying a plate of cookies. Thomas, I wanted to thank you again for the community fund. The Johnsons were able to fix their roof, the Garcias started their restaurant, and the church fixed the wheelchair ramp. It's nothing compared to what this community gave us. Community, Grace smiled. That's the key word, isn't it? We were always a community, but now we're a community that includes everyone. That evening, as Thomas tucked Sarah into bed, she asked him a question that had been on her mind. Daddy, do you think Mommy would be happy with how we've changed? Thomas sat on the edge of her bed, considering. I think she would be proud that we didn't let tragedy make us bitter, that we found faith and friends and purpose. Yes, Princess, I think she would be very happy. Benjamin says she's in heaven watching us. What do you think? I think she sent Benjamin to us, like an angel in a Superman t-shirt. Thomas laughed, remembering that first day when Benjamin stood on their doorstep in his worn clothes and bright smile. You know what, Princess? I think you might be right. As he turned off her light, Sarah called out, Daddy? Yes, I love you, and I'm glad we found God, even if we had to lose something first. Me too, Princess, me too. Thomas stood in Sarah's doorway for a moment, watching her settle into sleep, the friendship bracelet still on her wrist. He thought about the year's journey, from that empty birthday party to this full life. They had lost so much, but they had found even more. Faith, community, purpose, and the truth that Benjamin had spoken from the beginning. God doesn't make mistakes. He makes mysteries for us to figure out. And sometimes those mysteries lead us exactly where we need to be.